Whenever you think about the United States, one of the first things that comes to mind is our military. It's massive, powerful, and highly advanced in terms of tactics and technology. And part of the reason that it's able to hold the superiority over its rivals is primarily due to our defense industry, which is the largest and most powerful on the planet. But there's quite a few issues with this industry, and it's actually holding America back when it comes to our military power. Today on War Made Simple, we're going to take a dive into the American defense industry and see what's going on behind the scenes. Hey guys, Bill here, and today we're going to take a look at the American defense industry. Now, I know a lot of people are probably going to ask me to kind of take a deep dive in terms of kind of the ethics behind them. I'm not doing that, primarily because there's a lot of speculation on that, and while I do think there's a lot of merit to some of that speculation, I don't like going to speculation unless it's like a pre-made video like we did with our Taiwan series. This is going to be based in fact. And because of that, I want to take a look at the facts we have for defense industry. So let's start with the positives. The defense industry of the United States makes our military a dominant force. We have the best equipment on planet Earth, bar none. This is highlighted by our air programs. The F-22 Raptor and the F-35 don't really have any competitors. Yeah, China says that they are able to make more, but we have, this is going off of numbers that I have, each one of those aircraft are 100 times stealthier than their Chinese counterparts. Yeah, we are that far ahead of the curve. We're also the only nation developing 6th generation fighters already. To be clear, half the world has not made a 5th generation fighter yet. So we're already way ahead of that. In terms of technologies like hypersonic missiles, we've caught up to the rest of the world after being behind for a decade in about 3 years. In terms of our artillery stockpiles, we didn't have anywhere near enough to give Ukraine before the war. We have factories that were churning out around 6,000 shells per month pre-war to up to 100,000 shells per month today. So we've been able to kind of revolutionize a lot, both in terms of the arms industry and the technologies we use. Now that I've kind of gotten into some of the good that the defense industry does, I have to talk about kind of the main reason I'm making this video, which is the concerns I've seen outside the industry. Sure, we have the best technology in the world. Sure, we have the most advanced systems, guidance, rockets, everything. But what is it actually costing us per dollar? So some of you might know this, and for those of you who don't, we spend a stupid amount on defense in this country. $900 billion. That is more than the next 10 countries combined. Russia, China, India, Japan, Germany, South Korea, the list goes on. These are not small nations by any means, and we have a defense budget higher than all of them combined. On top of that, half of this budget, around $450 billion, goes to these defense industries. We're talking Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, the big giants. So we give them a lot of money. How do they use that money? So all the pieces of equipment that these guys send out to us are quality, and they're good and effective. That's not the issue. The issue is, well, they're kind of ripping us off a little bit. Before I go any further, I do want to emphasize one thing. I am very much for the idea of having a strong military. I am for the idea of the American soldier having the best equipment and technology to have in their hands, and I'm for them getting everything they need to win our wars and fights overseas. What I am not for is a company abusing taxpayer dollars to make a quick buck, and also abusing the trust of the American people. So I know that's a big claim. Unfortunately, I have a decent amount of information to back up that claim with. So let's go into it. First things first. In the 1980s, America had 50 different defense contractors all over the country doing all different things. Then the government basically said, we're going to merge these together to consolidate things to try and streamline our supply chains, which makes sense. But it also removed the competition. We went from 51 different companies to 5, and those 5 are still around today. There are a few smaller ones here and there, but no one's really been able to rival these guys. And these 5 all agreed kind of not to compete against each other on the field of pretty much anything. Some of them don't even make competitive technologies with one another, which means they were then and there able to set the price on pretty much anything they wanted. If they wanted to charge $500 million for one aircraft, they could, because the government had nowhere else to go to. and they started abusing this. This is seen in a couple of systems used today. In the Ukraine war right now, we're using Stinger missiles in the field against the Russians. We're giving the Ukrainians these weapons, and they're proving to be highly effective, so the Ukrainians want more. In 1991, one of these systems cost $25,000. Today, it costs $400,000. I understand technology gets better over time, not that much better. So we have huge price jump there. Another example is NASA needed a switch for one of its systems in the space shuttle. This switch costs $300 to make. They got it for $10,000 from government contractors, which is insane. There are plenty of examples like this even going forward. Now, some of you go, well, Bill, what about overseas? I mean, is this kind of comparable to what's going on in other countries? Let's look at that. The American destroyer class, the Arleigh Burke, our current mainstay fleet ship, is around $1.5 billion to build. It's built in one of, I believe it's 3 shipyards across the United States and takes us around 24 months to build one. Let's go over to Asia, specifically to South Korea, because they have a better quality standard than China, at least in my opinion on that. South Korea's newest flagship model for the destroyers, our destroyers 40 years old, mind you, took 14 months to build and cost $600 billion. Yes, the rest of the world is way, way better at us than building things cheaper and more efficiently. So our defense contractors do not have that benefit whatsoever. In fact, this has been an issue that has been popping up now, not just in the Ukraine war, as our stockpiles have diminished, but in Yemen. Yemen, we've been bombing it using our aircraft carrier strike groups. Our strike groups have often been limited because they are lacking the ammunition needed to bomb these sites, because that physically they don't have it. And Congress is having issues requisitioning more of this equipment because defense contractors are demanding even more money than they normally do. Price gouging, basically. So, in short, this is affecting not just the American consumer, but the American military as well. A very good example of this can be seen in our Navy. In the 1980s, there was 13 different shipyards spread across the United States that were working to build ships for us. Today, it's down to 5. Only one of them can build our supercarriers, and it takes forever to build anything now. So it's actively hampering the status of the United States Navy. A very good example of that, our submarines collectively are 20 years behind on maintenance. 20 years collectively. That's insane. This isn't just a concern about where our money is going and if our money is being used effectively at this point anymore. It's also a matter of, is our military able to be effective in a real wartime scenario? Because they can use all the weapons on board relatively quickly in an actual war. We need to resupply those weapons. And if we can't do that because of corporate greed or because of corporate, essentially, lobbying, then it puts the entire country at risk. Now, if I know this, there's a good chance that people in Congress know. And they are actively trying to work on a solution. Not just Republicans, not just Democrats, both. And when both sides agree that something is a problem, you know you've done something really wrong. So we'll see what happens with this in terms of Congress. But there is another alternative. We've seen the rise of a few smallish groups across kind of the United States and the world in general, which are trying to compete with the big 5 American companies. And they've had kind of limited success in some regards. There's a new type of missile, cruise missile, coming out for a fraction of the cost of the Tomahawk, and it can be made at scale in the United States. So, in short, America's defense industry needs a major change, and both parties are gunning for it now. Do I think this is going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. There's a ton of money in this industry, both from lobbyists and for the American economy in terms of jobs. So this is going to be a hard issue to address. Nevertheless, I do think it needs to be addressed, and I think that Congress might actually do something physically about this. Because right now, with the Ukraine war looking like it's not going anywhere anytime soon, the Middle East heating up, and China looking more and more likely like it's going to do something around Taiwan, America's military needs to be ready. And as much as the lobbyists like to think that they control Congress, it's actually not great when they're the ones holding back the very force protecting the country and them. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But that's all I got for you guys today. I'll see you again on Friday for our regularly scheduled broadcasts. Enjoy the week.